The heaviest crane on the planet lifts 1,200 tons. Yet, in Lebanon, there lies a stone weighing 1,650 tons. It was carved, polished, and prepared for transport over 2,000 years ago, and we still don't understand how. This isn't the only place where ancient builders achieved feats we cannot replicate. Across the globe stand fortresses constructed from stone blocks the size of buses, without cement, without cranes, without steel cables. These blocks are fitted together so tightly that not even a knife blade can pass between them. And now, for the most astonishing part of this entire story, these fortresses have endured earthquakes, wars, and centuries of neglect. Our modern concrete buildings begin to crack after just 50 years, while their walls have stood for 500, 1,000, and some even 2,000 years. Today, we embark on a journey to 6 locations on the map, where stone holds secrets that 21st century engineers have yet to unravel. By the end of this journey, you will learn about one particular fortress that modern science refuses to acknowledge, because its age shatters the entire chronology of human civilization. We begin in a place even experienced climbers hesitate to visit. Imagine a granite rock, 60 stories high, towering in the middle of a plain, sheer walls, no natural steps, no gentle slopes. This is Sigiriya, the Lion Rock, on the island of Sri Lanka, dating back to the 5th century CE. King Kashyapa seized the throne by murdering his own father and entombing him alive within a wall. He knew his brother, Megala, had fled to India and would eventually return with an army. Kashyapa needed an impregnable fortress. Any sensible ruler would have built a stronghold on a hill, but Kashyapa decided to construct a palace atop a 200-meter-high rock. In just 7 years, 20,000 workers transformed the bare stone into a city in the clouds. On a summit spanning half a hectare, they erected a palace complete with pools, gardens, and an intricate water supply system. What truly astounds is how water was raised 200 meters up the rock face to feed the fountains in the royal gardens. These fountains still operate today, 1,500 years later. The engineers employed a system of enclosed channels and pressure differentials. Water flowed through clay pipes embedded directly into the rock. At each level, reservoirs created the necessary pressure for the next ascent. This ingenious application of the principle of communicating vessels, the very hydraulics we often attribute to the European Renaissance, was utilized by the builders of Sigiriya 1,000 years earlier. At the base of the rock, they created gardens with fountains and pools where water rose due to natural pressure, without a single pump. Archaeologists have tested the system and found it still functions during the rainy season, 1,500 years later, without repair or maintenance. Try to find a modern plumbing system that would last even 100 years without pipe replacement. And this was in a country where textbooks claim people lived in simple huts and tilled the land with sticks. If the builders of Sigiriya conquered gravity with water, the next builders conquered stone itself. At 4,000 meters above sea level, the air is so thin that breathing is difficult even when standing still. We are in Bolivia, on a high-altitude plateau near Lake Titicaca. Here lie the ruins of Puma Punku, which means Gate of the Puma in the Aymara language. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 15th century, they found a chaotic scattering of gigantic stone blocks across the ground. An earthquake had long ago devastated the site, dispersing the blocks across the plateau. Yet, even in ruins, Puma Punku shocks anyone familiar with stone masonry. The blocks are carved from andesite, one of the hardest volcanic rocks on the planet, and they are cut with a precision that modern engineers compare to laser machining. Perfect 90-degree angles, drilled holes 6 millimeters in diameter spaced identically, and surfaces polished to a glass-like smoothness. The most enigmatic feature here are the so-called H-shaped blocks. Each has approximately 80 facets, and all blocks are identical, fitting together like pieces of a giant construction kit, as if someone had established mass production 1,000 years before the first factory. But there's another detail that defies all theories. Traces of metal clamps were found in the grooves of some blocks. Analysis revealed that the metal was poured directly on site in a molten state. This implies the builders possessed portable furnaces for melting metal at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters, where oxygen is barely sufficient for breathing, yet they maintained fires hot enough to melt bronze. Furthermore, the builders of Puma Punku had neither the wheel, nor writing, nor metal tools capable of cutting andesite. How then did they cut this stone if not with metal? The official version suggests stone hammers and infinite patience. One researcher attempted to reproduce a pattern on a block by hand using stone tools. A palm-sized section took her 40 hours of work. At Puma Punku, there are hundreds of such blocks, each meticulously worked on all sides. If you find the stones in Bolivia impressive, prepare yourselves, because everything we have seen so far will seem like child's play compared to what awaits us in Lebanon. The city of Baalbek, in the Bekaa Valley, sits 1,170 meters above sea level. Here, the Romans built the Temple of Jupiter, one of the most magnificent temples in the empire's history. However, the temple stands on a foundation that predates Rome itself. At its base lie 3 stones known as the trilithon. Each is 19 meters long, over 4 meters high, and weighs approximately 800 tons. To grasp this weight, imagine 5 fully loaded passenger airplanes compressed into a single stone block. And these blocks are not merely resting on the ground. They were lifted to a height of 6 meters and set upon a foundation of smaller stones with such precision that the seams between them are almost invisible. In a nearby quarry, there lies another block that was never transported to the site. Archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute discovered it only in 2014 and named it the Forgotten Stone. Its weight, according to scientific calculations, is 1,650 tons. This is one of the heaviest stones ever processed by humans, roughly equivalent to the weight of a space shuttle at launch. How it was intended to be moved remains a mystery. Wooden rollers would have been instantly crushed under such weight. One engineer calculated that moving such a block on wooden rollers would require 40,000 workers in a row, but it is physically impossible to place that many people around a single stone. Even the most powerful crane of our time could not lift this stone whole. This begs the question that continues to baffle engineers. If the Romans could move 800-ton stones, why did they carve a 1,650-ton block? They clearly intended to move it, meaning they possessed a method we do not understand. Or perhaps it wasn't the Romans. Some researchers point out that the foundation of Baalbek is significantly older than the Roman structures built upon it. The marks of stone processing in the foundation differ from Roman techniques. If the foundation wasn't built by the Romans, then who and when? This question remains unanswered to this day. While Baalbek stuns with the immense weight of its stones, the next fortress impresses with a precision that seems impossible without measuring instruments. In Peru, at 3,700 meters above sea level, on the outskirts of Cusco, stands Sacsayhuaman, a fortress the Incas began constructing in the 10th century. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are built from giant, irregularly shaped limestone blocks. The largest weigh up to 200 tons and reach 9 meters in height, roughly the height of a 3-story building. But it's not their size that's remarkable, it's how these stones are joined. Each block has a unique polygonal shape. No 2 stones are alike. Yet, they interlock to form a single wall without gaps. They are fitted together so perfectly that it's impossible to slide even a sheet of paper between the joints, all without mortar, without cement, without any binding agents. Just stone against stone, facet against facet, with tolerances down to fractions of a millimeter. When the Spanish conquered Cusco, they decided to dismantle Sacsayhuaman and use the stones for their own buildings. The chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega wrote that the Spanish carried off everything they could move, but the largest blocks in the lower courses they didn't even attempt to touch. They simply lacked the technology to pry these stones apart. Conquerors with cannons and horses found themselves powerless before a wall built by people with stone hammers. Consider this for a moment. How could such precision be achieved by shaping stone with other stones? Modern engineers have studied these walls and made an unexpected discovery. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are inclined inwards, and their zigzag shape distributes stress during seismic tremors. This is a complete anti-seismic structure, meticulously designed. The principles it employs were only formulated by us in the 20th century. The Incas applied them 500 years before us, without formulas or computer calculations. They simply knew how stone behaved during an earthquake. Where did this knowledge come from? Perhaps from the experience of many generations who observed which walls crumbled and which survived. But to apply this experience on such a scale requires a system, a school, a transmission of knowledge. Yet, we are told the Incas didn't even have a writing system. Over 500 years, Cusco has endured dozens of destructive earthquakes. Spanish cathedrals, built from stones salvaged from Sacsayhuaman's walls, crumbled again and again. Each time they were rebuilt, and each time the earth broke them anew. Yet the Inca walls stand as if on their first day, without a single crack or shift, through 5 centuries of continuous tremors. Do you think ancient builders could truly have achieved all this by hand? Or are we missing something about past technologies? Sacsayhuaman protected against enemies and earthquakes, but in Cappadocia, Turkey, builders went even further. They hid an entire city underground. Derinkuyu is located in central Anatolia, in modern-day Turkey. From the outside, it's an unremarkable landscape of soft, tough hills. But beneath the surface lie 18 levels, descending to a depth of about 85 meters. This underground city was designed for 20,000 people, with living quarters, kitchens, churches, schools, grain and wine storage, and ventilation shafts that supplied fresh air to all levels. It featured a system of millstone-like stone doors that could be closed from the inside, but were impossible to open from the outside. Each such door was a stone disc weighing about half a ton, rolling along a special groove to hermetically seal the passage. Not even a battering ram would help, as the corridors were too narrow to gain momentum. Each floor could be blocked independently, ensuring that if an enemy breached one level, the others remained secure. On the lowest level, archaeologists discovered an underground river, providing the city with its own fresh water source, inaccessible to besiegers. People could live here for months without ever surfacing. This was not a mere cave for shelter from rain. It was a full-fledged work of military engineering, meticulously planned down to the smallest detail. The exact date of Derinkuyu's construction is still debated. Some scholars date the earliest levels to the 7th century BCE, nearly 3,000 years ago, while others believe excavation began even earlier. But what is truly astonishing about this place is that Derinkuyu's ventilation shafts pass vertically through 85 meters of rock, with minimal deviation from the vertical throughout their entire length. How could a vertical shaft be bored to such a depth without a laser level or surveying instruments? In candlelight, in complete darkness, through tens of meters of stone, without losing direction. Modern miners use gyroscopic sensors and satellite navigation for such work. The builders of Derinkuyu managed with something else, and we don't know what. Engineers still debate this, and no single theory fully explains the result. Derinkuyu proves that ancient builders knew how to work not only with surface stone but also with entire mountains from within. And now we come to the promised fortress, the one that shatters all chronology. The island of Java in Indonesia holds a place that has overturned perceptions of antiquity. For centuries, locals visited Mount Gunung Padang to pray among the old stones on its summit. Everyone considered it an ordinary sanctuary until geologists arrived in 2010. They were studying the region's seismic activity and scanned the hill with ground-penetrating radar. The instruments revealed something no one expected. Beneath layers of earth and grass was not a natural mountain, but a man-made structure, a massive pyramid of stone blocks, with chambers and voids within. When scientists conducted radiocarbon dating of organic material found between stones at a depth of 30 meters, the result forced them to recheck their equipment. The age of the lower layers indicated approximately 20,000 years. This dates back to the last ice age, when mammoths still roamed Europe, and the construction of the Egyptian pyramids was still 15,000 years in the future. The results were published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal in 2023. The article appeared in Archaeological Prospection, and its authors, geologists and archaeologists from several universities, staked their reputations on these data. Part of the scientific community accepted the findings, while another part vehemently disputes them. Critics argue that radiocarbon analysis might have dated natural organic matter, not the construction itself. Supporters counter that the organic material was found between cut stones at a depth where it could not have accumulated accidentally. The debate continues, which is normal. That's how science works. But if the dating is correct, the implications are enormous. It means that organized construction of monumental structures began 10,000 years earlier than what is written in textbooks. It means that during an era when humans supposedly lived in caves and hunted with spears, someone was designing a stone pyramid. Not a simple hut or shelter, but an engineered structure with internal chambers. 6 fortresses in 6 different locations on the planet. Fountains that have worked for 1,500 years without repair. Stone blocks heavier than any existing crane. Perfect precision without a single measuring instrument. A city 18 stories deep underground with its own water supply. And a pyramid that may predate the very idea of civilization. Each of these constructions, individually, raises questions, but when viewed together, the question changes. It's not just, how did they do it, but what else were they capable of, and how many more such places have we yet to discover? We are accustomed to thinking that progress moves in a straight line from cave to skyscraper, that each successive generation knows more than the last. The stones tell a different story. They speak of knowledge that emerged, reached incredible heights, and then vanished without a trace, not because it was primitive, but because no one recorded the instructions. The builders of Sigiriya took the secret of their hydraulics with them. The masters of Puma Punku left no blueprints. The architects of Baalbek never explained how to move stones weighing 1,000 tons. All that remains after them are the stones themselves, and these stones ask questions for which we currently have no answers. Perhaps the most dangerous illusion of our time is that we consider ourselves the pinnacle, while the stones simply remain silent, waiting for us to grow enough to understand how they got there.